It's the emotional desire to transfer an emotional state to somebody else is what makes a writer a writer. And that's what makes a good story. Stories can't just be cool. They have to have a thing to say. They have to have a reason for existing. I explained it to young writers is when you're young, you think you just want to race. You want it to be fast. You want it to be pulp, and that's great. But what is it about you that is changing that story into something different and something unique?
I'm curious to know, you've written in both settings where you've written with a group of writers and obviously you've written by yourself. What are the pros and cons of each? And do you prefer one over the other, or do you need to do both? Do you feel like sometimes when you've written by yourself too long, I need to get back and write with a group of guys or girls?
They both push and pull different muscles, but I think the idea is, or the overriding ethos is, in TV, it's not yours. It is, you can write a script and have your name on it, but you're not telling your story. You're helping somebody else tell their story. And so consequently, the communal experience, the collaborative experience, that we are all in a boat trying to row the same direction to get to the same destination is wonderful and lovely. And there's few things that I enjoy more than sitting in a room with really smart people solving problems. And that feeling when you know that you did it, when you're kind of in the downhill of story and everything's kind of moving and, the synchronicity is happening and things begin to lay out in the way that they should, and inertia takes over. It's really heady. It's like you're all on a roller coaster together and and you're not afraid of it anymore. But that said, it's not your story. You're doing a very good job of imitating somebody else's voice and helping them tell the story that they've wanted to tell.
Mm-hmm.
Writing for yourself, which it's either on a pilot that I'm doing, which is a, solitary experience, or a comic book that I'm writing, the authorship is real. You're getting to say the things that you want to say. And that at the end of the day is we all like to be in the band, but everybody wants a guitar solo every now and again, right? Everybody wants to sure. This is my song.
Yeah.
This is the song of my heart, everybody. And so I think it's kind of necessary to find a way to balance those two things, especially if you're a room person. I am a writer's room person. I like that feeling of collaboration, and I think I work well with others. But I couldn't do just all of one and none of the other.
Sure.
Because I think you have to be able to indulge that stuff. You have to be able to say, I don't want to have to negotiate on this. I don't have to defend this choice.
True.
There's nobody else here for me to have to defend it against. I think this is right. This is what I'm doing. In comics, at some point, there's going to be an editor and an artist and a colorist and a letterer, and there's a team of people to help you make the thing. And there's all conversations that you can have. I'm always very candid when I sit down with a penciler for the first time. And I'm like, hey, listen, I can't draw. So this is a best guess. I think this works. I think that this will produce the emotional response that we're looking for. But if you have a better way to do this, let's talk about it. If you can solve a problem that I didn't even know was there, do it. Because the collaboration still wants to happen because you want the best thing. But I can defend the choices in this because they're my choices. I can tell you exactly why I made every choice, just so you know what we're going for. But if there's a better way to do it, let's do it. But this is what we're doing.
So what is that process? I'm not, like we just discussed, you've worked with other writers before, and that's something that you're doing yourself. What is it like working with an artist? Because that's a different type of creative talent. So whenever you're working collaboratively with an artist on a comic book, what is that relationship like? I'm sure it's different depending upon the artist himself and his personality and what they prefer to have from you. But from your experience, what has it been like working with other artists to produce a comic book?
It differs, as every collaboration is a different beast, with a different person. Even if it's the same person on a different project, it's always a movable feast. Some of it depends on when the artist comes aboard. There are projects where I've written the script entirely. If it's a graphic novel and here's 100 pages of copy, and it's done before I knew who the artist was going to be. Um, that is a different process than here's an idea that I have. We get the green light to go make a thing. Now it's hours from the jump together.
Okay.
And I think that
Yeah.
if you can sit down with a person and start having just let's talk, let's get to know each other. Like, what do you like to draw? What do you like to do? What do you hate to draw? Like, if you don't like horses, then maybe a Western ain't for you, sister. Like
Sure.
it's that like kind of first couple of dates of just trying to get a sense of what they like, what they don't like, what they prefer, what they don't prefer. But it's again, it's the I can always take some solace in knowing that like I know this story incredibly well. I can tell you the reasons why for the story. I can answer any question you'll have about the story. How can we do the best job of putting that on the page? And it might not be how I've broken it down. Like, all right, I think I have a pretty decent sense for kind of rhythm on the page and whatever. But if you tell me that 8 panels are better than 5 that I've asked for, okay, let's take a look at it. Like, lay it out. Let's see if it works.
Yeah. That's a great collaboration is when everyone's trying to plus each other and just sort of enhance the experience all the way down the chain, especially when you have more than 2 people collaborating on something. I did have a question around the difference between working on something that you've created whole cloth versus working on something like a licensed character. The how your personal style is injected into the character and being able to shepherd it along in the long line of people who've already worked on the character. What are those two experiences like, and how do you keep your voice and yet honor the character?
I think it's always a dance. I think dealing with licensed characters, dealing with company owned characters. And I think for me, it's I've been lucky enough to get to do some Marvel stuff, some Star Wars stuff as of late, and for me, it's always, can this story be saying something? Because a story should say something. It can't just be enough that like, all right, well, what is it? It's Darth Vader. Well, we actually need to do more than that. It's Darth Vader with a lightsaber doing Darth Vader stuff. Like, that's cool, right? People pay for that, right? Yeah, but could we say a thing about a thing? Can we talk about culpability? Can we talk about responsibility? Can we talk about survivor's guilt? Can we talk about whatever? A lot of it ends up being, here's a character that I cannot change, so I'm going to invent a character that's next to that character who can be a brand new thing, who can say the things that I need the story to say, that is not bound by the same rules that primary character is. So in both the Vader sort of 13-pager that I did, I invented a new character who's this young Imperial pilot that Vader plucks out of quote unquote obscurity to go on a mission. And it's like, oh, well, now I can talk about Vader from the perspective of someone who's not Vader. Now they can have conversations that are very one-sided because Vader's not a chatty fella. But I can explicate all of these thoughts and ideas not through Vader. Same thing with the Mace Windu thing. Like, Mace Windu is Mace Windu. You do not have a ton of latitude with that. Even if you, like, our story picks him up earlier in his career and not later in his career. But A, he's Mace Windu, and B, he's Sam Jackson. And so, like, there's not a lot of wiggle room with how that guy presents himself.
True.
That's true. Himself. Like
he comes to the table with his voice.
Absolutely. Like, he's going to sound like Sam Jackson. And so that's the sounding board. Like, did that sound Sam Jackson enough? Can you imagine Sam Jackson saying this? Then, okay, that sounds right. But he's not going to have perspectives on things, or he's not going to even be able to voice stuff without somebody butting up against him. So like, that's kind of the process for me is what's the immovable thing? And then how do I get to create something around the immovable thing that lets me do some interesting stuff and have some things to say? And then the creator owned stuff, like, you hope it comes from a place that is not just, this is cool.
Right.
Like, cool is nice, but I
thank you for saying that.
But I mean, like, I worked on a TV show. It was a spin out from the John Wick universe called The Continental. And the thing that we discovered in that writer's room is that the things in John Wick that feel like glossy and cool, like, with the gold coins, those are neat, right? Yeah. The high table. What does all this mean? I don't know, but it's mysterious. You don't have to answer those questions in a 2-hour movie. They can just kind of be cool. But in a TV show where suddenly they're like narrative engines and you're building drama and you're having to understand the hierarchy of a thing like the high table. Like, who is it? How does it work? Who are the members? Is it a pyramid scheme? Is it not a pyramid scheme? How do the Continental hotels fit under the high table? How is the manager of a Continental different from just like all of it starts to crumble a little bit because it wasn't built as load bearing. It was built as that's kind of cool, and that's great. I love it. I love those movies, but trying to understand it from the core is like, ooh, this can't just be cool, and so stories can't just be cool. They have to like have a thing to say. They have to have a reason for existing. They have to have, what's the character story you want to tell? What's the world story you want to tell? What's the emotional story you want to tell? And especially in genre, what is the story you're telling about the world we live in today? Because that's genre's great gift, is that it lets you mirror without, it's a funhouse mirror, right? Like I can confront you with real things without you being sort of obstinate about it because it's a real thing. So what are we saying about today in using this as our vehicle for doing it?
Star Trek was great about doing that. The early
Trek,
stuff.
Twilight Zone, like
Twilight Zone, perfect.
Planet of the Apes, like all of those things are just like, oh no, it's all commentary. It's always commentary. The Matrix commentary. Fucking it always is, because we're only ever telling stories about today anyway, because we don't know tomorrow. There is no tomorrow.
So would you say, like in your journey as a writer, that you've developed a style that is recognizable, that people seek out what you do because of the way you do it? And what would that style? I mean, how could you describe that style to people?
I think that in the beginning of my sort of writing for television career, even before I got a chance to break in, because that process is long and difficult, and sometimes you end up breaking in more than once because the business is merciless. It had the evolution was from that's pretty cool to, oh, that's a thing about a thing. I explained it to young writers is like, yeah, when you're young, you think you just want to race. You want it to be fast. You want it to be pulp, and that's great. It's TV. TV's pulp. It should be that. But what is it about you that is changing that story into something different and something unique? What are you bringing to it? How much of yourself are you in access of? How much of yourself can you bring to bear? And how much do you know about yourself to understand that that's what's necessary? That's what's required. I think that the reasons I end up, working when I end up working is because people respond to the ability to build worlds that make sense. Like there was this one script that I wrote early on about magic users, and I've always disliked stories about magic where magic is cheap. Like the Harry Potter stories. Like, no, I mean, they're lovely little fables or whatever, but like magic seems to be a thing that anybody within that world can use, and can use to whatever degree they need to use it. And I'm like, yeah, but I grew up on the X-Men. Like I grew up on everything costs something.
Sure.
Like, sure, you can fly, but you've got these giant fucking wings all the time. Like, yes, you can teleport, but you're a goblin that doesn't fit anywhere. Like everything had a cost. And so I just created this sort of magic system. It's a very rudimentary thing, but like for every bit of magic, it costs some time off your life. Little magic is a minute, big magic is a year. Like, how much do you want to do this, and how much are you willing to pay for this? Which means that suddenly magic's not a thing that happens everywhere all the time, because it costs everybody to use it.
That's fantastic.
And so figuring out that kind of thing, like suddenly an executive reads that, it's like, oh, all right, okay, that makes sense. That's cool. How does the rest of the world build on that particular conceit? Does it feel deep enough? Does it feel rich enough? If we scratch the surface, does it make sense? We don't have to like spelunk into the bowels of it, but like it's TV, and it needs to feel as if it makes sense. As a writer, I was very early on heavily influenced by Warren Ellis. This feeling of like pace and fun and big ideas, and kind of like big sci-fi stuff, but just this feeling of like a joie de vivre, this feeling of, oh, he's having a good time writing it. I'm having a good time reading it. Shouldn't we be having a good time? So trying to bring that onto the page and for better or worse, I think that's part of a thing that has become part of the toolbox.
Shane and I really appreciate you guys tuning into our YouTube channel today. If you enjoyed this short conversation and would like to see the entire interview, then please head on over to our Substack, where you'll not only find all of our full-length interviews, but a ton of super interesting posts that we've created just for you guys. Link is in the description box below. So until next time, thanks for watching.